Thank you. It now being 7:02 on Monday, December 13th, we'll begin this meeting of the Committee of Ordinance and Rules. We are meeting obviously via Zoom, so as such, all votes will be by roll call. There will be at least a portion of the meeting tonight that will have a public comment period. We can use our raise hand function, and we'll address that a little bit closer to when we get to that point of the meeting. With that said, Clerk Semino, can we have a roll call to begin the meeting?
Councilor Ringus.
Here.
Councilor Sasha.
Here.
Councilor Flaherty.
Here.
Councilor Mackin.
Here.
All present.
Thank you, Clerk Semino. I'd also note that we have Councilor Connors from District 3 joining us tonight. She will be addressing us on one of the items before us on the agenda, and also Solicitor / Chief of Staff Taub, who will have some input for us as well tonight. With that said, there are no approval of minutes tonight, so we're going to move slightly out of order on the agenda tonight. If you have the agenda in front of you, initially we were going to be taking up the single-use plastic bag ban, but based on Councilor Connors' schedule, we're going to actually move first to 00221. Councilor Sasha, Councilor Connors, amendment to bylaw section 135-1101, or taking up any action relative thereto. Do we have a motion to take off the table 002-21?
Motion to take item 00221 off the table.
I have a motion by Councilor Sasha. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilor Flaherty. Clerk Semino, a roll call vote.
Councilor Ringus.
Aye.
Councilor Sasha.
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilor Mackin.
Aye.
4 in favor, 0 opposed.
And that is unanimous. So moving on, this was an item that was initially sponsored by Councilor Sasha, Councilor Connors. There has been discussion on rules as well as with the mayor's office. Councilor Sasha, did you want to start as a member of the committee by giving us sort of an update on where we stand?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a reminder, this is another amendment that has been a long time in the works. Councilor Connors and I first were approaching this individually and realized we were working on some of the same things, so brought it all together. It was a response to some drainage issues where people were draining water from sump pumps onto their neighbor's yard or across the sidewalk, creating hazardous conditions. We had added in there some anti-blight language about residential properties. So that piece of it has since been moved into the mayor's anti-blight ordinance, which just recently passed. All we have left now is the drainage piece in this, and Assistant Solicitor Huff went through and took all the language that we had, which was quite lengthy and technical, and consolidated it into one sentence, which seems to capture everything quite nicely, which is simply that you cannot drain water from your property onto your neighbor's property or across the sidewalk. It's simple. I think I'll let Councilor Connors speak to it, but I think this is something we can both support, and I hope everybody else will too.
Thank you, Councilor Sasha, for the update. Before I go to members of the Ordinance and Rules, this was a proposal by Councilor Connors, and I know she has some time issues tonight. Councilor Connors, anything to add?
No, I would just thank you, Councilor Sasha. That was perfect, exactly how you said it. It all comes down to one sentence, but it definitely covers exactly what we're looking for. You cannot drain onto your neighbor's yards. You cannot drain onto the sidewalk and cause people to get hurt. And it gives the town the ability to take action and enforce people that are disregarding the rule.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions before I turn to Solicitor Taub? Any questions from the other two councilors, Councilor Flaherty or Councilor Mackin? Not at this time. So Councilor Sasha, turning first to you. In terms of your discussions with Assistant Solicitor Huff and the mayor's office on this one, What are the next steps that would be needed? Has there been any sort of follow-up there? Or has it all been encapsulated?
I think at this point, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I think it's ready to go. I mean, legal crafted the language, so presumably they are okay with the language at this point. So I will defer to Solicitor Taub if I'm incorrect about that, but I think at this point we would be ready to take a vote on the language as Assistant Solicitor Huff wrote it up and send it back to the council.
I would turn it over to Solicitor Taub.
Thank you, Chairman Ringus. Good evening, everybody. That is accurate. So I believe the amendment that was drafted was to a zoning ordinance. Is that right, Councilor Sasha? 135
Yes.
dash 1101. So that would have to go through the zoning text amendment process. So it would have to get filed formally with the clerk's office, referred to the planning board. Both bodies would have to have hearings, and then it would be approved through that protocol. So I think we would need to finalize a sponsor for it, but I think it's a fairly straightforward amendment. It's kind of cleared the legal hurdles at this point. It's something that the mayor's office would support. So procedurally, it wouldn't be enough, I guess, for this committee to take a vote and then send it back to the council, because it would have to go through the zoning amendment protocols, which we would be happy to initiate with a planning board sponsor, probably for review at their January meeting at this point.
Councilor Sasha, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Solicitor Taub, can you explain to us the process for the council to sponsor this amendment? Because the council can sponsor a zoning amendment, right? The council, any 10 residents, or the planning board.
That would be correct.
So what would that process look like? If it's already in the council, could we send this back to the council and ask for the council as a whole to sponsor it?
I suppose you could, I would be curious to look back to see if that's ever been done, but I suppose you could send it back from this committee with a favorable recommendation as amended. The council could have discussion and vote on whether or not to sponsor it, and then it would just start the filing process over with Clerk Semino, get sent out. Presumably this body has already, you probably, for administrative or procedural reasons, you'd want to have another hearing again with the formal language, because it has been somewhat modified since what was originally proposed, and the planning board can undertake its standard hearing process. Clerk Semino, do you know if the council, can you recall an occasion where the council has sponsored an amendment in the past?
I don't remember any. That's why I'm actually thinking if it's really,
I would want to double
acceptable.
check before I give a final, which I can do probably before this meeting is over. But like I said, just the mayor supports the proposal, is fully intended on moving it forward and making sure it gets filed appropriately for review and proper consideration.
Councilor Sasha, follow up on that?
Yeah, I think I'd still like to understand the process. Obviously I'm bringing some other amendments into this, right? My concerns about other amendments being held up with the planning board sponsoring it. And I just want to understand what it would take for the council to sponsor it. And it's just not that, since it's already in committee, it's not clear to me how that would work. So any insight would be appreciated.
Certainly.
Well, so Todd, could I ask if we, Councilor Sasha and Councilor Connors have put a lot of work into this, and I know they've had meetings with Assistant Solicitor Huff. There would be nothing necessarily if this subcommittee tonight voted favorably to move it to the full council, and then there was additional issues faced. we could address that at the full council, just for the purposes of getting this out of committee and back to the full council. We could always address it at that point, correct?
Certainly, this committee can certainly vote this evening to recommend the change as amended to 135-1101 back to the full council, and then procedurally we can address it. We can address it there. Absolutely.
I think that just, it might make it, I think it makes it sense for allows us to move forward, cognizant of, I think, the work that was put in here by the two councilors.
Absolutely. And just so that you have it, it was a change to existing bylaw 135-1101, the establishment of standards, subsection F, adding at the end of the last sentence, comma, nor shall any water be discharged onto any sidewalk or over a property line.
Councilor Flaherty, anything to add?
No.
I know, I just wanted to note, Councilor Mackin has sent a message. His camera is malfunctioning. We've seen him here tonight. He is there in the shadow of black. Councilor Mackin, anything that you wanted to add? Okay, seeing none. Councilor Connors.
Pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Connors, anything further to add?
No, thank you.
And Councilor Shasho, I will circle back to you as the final authority here. Anything to add, or would you like to make some sort of a motion tonight?
No, I just thank you for letting us send this back to the council tonight. I think that is appreciated. Do I need to read the text of the whole amendment, or am I just making a motion to for favorable action on this item? Is that good, Sue?
Clerk Semino?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's just make sure we read it in full council so everyone understands what it's all about.
Of course.
Got it. Thank you.
So
then I'm going to make. Oh,
go ahead. I was.
Motion for favorable action on item 00221.
Which would be an amendment to bylaw section 135-1101 as amended.
Yes.
I have a motion from Councilor Shasha. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilor Flaherty. Clerk Semino, a roll call vote.
Councilor Ringus,
Aye.
Councilor Sasha,
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty,
Yes.
Councilor Mackin.
Aye.
That's 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Solicitor Todd, for your help on this. Thank you, Councilor Shasha and Councilor Connors. Councilor Connors, I'm a little saddened because I think this might be your last O&R meeting with us.
Do you believe it's my last meeting? Or do I have one more Ways and Means? No.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your work over the last 2 years. I know you're not one for the accolades, but the work you've put into things like this, your attention to detail, it has been very appreciated over the last 2 years. The residents of District 3 were very lucky to have you on their side, and I know that you will continue to be engaged in our community through Scouts and other avenues. So I know this is probably not the last time we'll see you in one of those meetings. You just won't have a title.
That's
but
right. You're in good hands with the new counselor coming in District 3. You are. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to scooch now. Is that okay?
Thank you, Donna.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
With that said, we are slightly out of order on our agenda. I believe that Councilor Shasha, your inclusionary amendment, which is just going to basically be an update as well. I don't think there's going to be any action tonight. So I think just to kind of keep the meeting flowing, we'll touch on this, then we'll circle back to the plastic bag stuff. So if there's no objections to that, going to 00321, Councilor Shasha, inclusionary amendment, or taking up any action relative thereto. Is there a motion to take that off the table?
Motion to take item 00321 off the table.
Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Councilor Shasha. Do I have a second by Councilor Flaherty? Oh, do I have a second by anyone?
Second.
The second by Councilor Flaherty. Clerk Semino, a roll call vote.
Councilor Ringus,
Aye.
Counselor Sasha,
Yes.
Counselor Flaherty,
Yes.
Counselor Mackin,
Aye.
4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. So we've had some meetings where we updated on this. Councilor Sasha, again, this an item you've been working on. I know there's been conversation with the mayor's office. Did you want to give the subcommittee an update on where we stand?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we did, the mayor has been supportive of this for quite a while, and Chief of Staff Taub has been working on it. Excuse me. Director Santucci Razzi has been working on it. The language has been finalized. It was sent to the planning board for sponsorship. And at the last meeting, they neither agreed to sponsor it or agreed not to sponsor it. So at the moment, it is in a bit of a state of limbo. I'm hoping that at tomorrow's meeting, they will make a decision to sponsor it. If they don't, we do have 10 residents ready to go who will sponsor this, and we'll do it that way. Either way, I would estimate that it would be in front of the planning board in another month. They will make a recommendation and send it right back to the council. So at the moment, nothing has changed since last month.
Now there will be a meeting tomorrow, Councilor Sasha, is that correct?
Yes, and this will be not on the agenda, but an item for discussion for them to decide if they want to sponsor it or not.
Well, thank you very much for that update. Solicitor Taub, I saw you kind of make a motion with your hand, or would you like to comment?
Thank you. So after the November meeting, when the planning board was presented with the draft, that was the result of the work done by Councilor Sasha and Director Santucci Razzi and myself. There was some concerns with some of the language and whether or not it was feasible and what the kind of unintended consequences would be. So after the November meeting, Director Santucci Razzi, Attorney Huff, and I believe Member Croha got together and have put together some revisions to the draft that the planning board is going to be considering tomorrow evening at the meeting. And so I do agree with Councilor Sasha that it will either be that version sponsored by the planning board, or, certainly 10 residents can proceed with a different version. But it is on the agenda. It is going to be discussed tomorrow evening, and a decision will be made one way or another as far as planning board sponsorship.
Thank you very much, Solicitor Taub. Do we know, is that meeting, I'm assuming that meeting's via Zoom, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Councilor Flaherty, any questions or comments?
Well, we talked about building community support for inclusionary and inclusionary housing, and I'm just wondering, where we stand on that, whether the mayor's office or anybody else has made any move in that regard.
Councilor Shasha's raised his hand, so I will call on him first, and then if Solicitor Taub wants.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Councilor Flaherty, I did have a community meeting last night. In fact, I see several of the people that attended that meeting in tonight's meeting, so I assume they're here to hear what's going on with this amendment. We had a few people. I think there's been some activity on social media about trying to get the word out about this. I mean, this is something that has literally been under discussion in Braintree for 18 years and has never made it across the finish line. So I think that's why it has been important to me to get the planning board to make a decision, because once there's a public hearing, whether it's the planning board or then later at the council, I think that is when we're going to hear from a lot of residents. And, as long as it's in the state of limbo, we can't do that. So if I have to have more meetings, I will. But we will have at least 2 public hearings for this too.
Okay.
Anything further, Councilor Flaherty?
No, not right now.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Mackin, any comments or questions? Oh. I think you were unmuting as you spoke, so I think I took it as a no.
No, that's correct.
Thank you, Councilor Mackin. Solicitor Todd, anything you wanted to add?
I, not particularly on this, but I would circle back to confirm that the council can in fact sponsor an amendment. So Clerk Semino, perhaps you, myself, and may make sense for Director Santucci-Razzi to connect on process just to make sure we get the language right. And I think what the council would do on the other item is similar to what the planning board is going to do tomorrow night on the inclusionaries, to have a discussion about sponsorship. So, you know, we can certainly make sure that gets taken care of.
Thank you for that update. Councilor Shasha, as this was your proposal, anything to add or wait to see what happens?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think we're waiting till tomorrow.
All right, so we will look forward to some sort of update on that in the future, and I'm sure some of us will be tuning in to see how that discussion goes tomorrow night. With that said, no, Clerk Semino, no recommendation needed from this committee tonight until planning finishes what they're doing, so we just move to table this again. Do I have a motion to table 00321, Councilor Shasha, inclusionary amendment, or any action relative thereto?
Motion to table item 00321.
I have a motion by Councilor Shasha. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilor Flaherty. Clerk Semino, a roll call vote.
Councilor Ringus,
Aye.
Councilor Sasha,
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty,
Yes.
Councilor Mackin,
Aye.
4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. That item is tabled, and we will follow that up at a future ONR meeting and see how things go tomorrow night. Moving back to what would have been the first item on the agenda, we're slightly out of order tonight. Again, this is under old business 20034, Councilor O'Brien, 8.800, single-use plastic bag reduction bylaw or take up any action related thereto. Do I have a motion to take off of the table 20034?
Motion to take off the table item 20034.
I have a motion from Councilor Shasha. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilor Flaherty. Clerk Semino, a roll call vote, please.
Councilor Ringus,
Aye.
Councilor Sasha,
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty,
Yes.
Councilor Mackin,
Aye.
4 in favor, 0 opposed.
And that is unanimous. So moving on to 20034. This is like a little background, a little bit of an older proposal. Councilor O'Brien had made this proposal what seems like ages ago, before we all knew what COVID was. And then COVID came to be, and things sort of got held up as we sort of learned what sort of how meetings would take shape. And obviously at some point we began meeting via Zoom. At the time that we started meeting via Zoom, the governor, as part of his executive orders and executive actions related to COVID, had actually banned the use of reusable bags because at the time there was some concern that COVID could live on a surface and move with it. And so this sort of item became somewhat moot because the governor's orders were going to keep it from moving forward regardless. This had also was coinciding with a presentation that a group of Girl Scouts was going to do for us. Myself and President Hume had spoken, and rather than make the Girl Scout troop come in and speak to the ONR and then come back to the full council, we ended up having them come in and do a very well put together presentation on the sort of their thoughts, views, and opinions on why it would be important for Braintree to take up a plastic bag ban. I think everyone here was present. They did a great job. So then it came back to us again, and that's where we find ourselves tonight. In the interim, we have sent out for some opinions from our legislative delegation, Senators Keenan, Senators Timilty, and Representative Cusack, as over the years there have been a series of proposed statutes or proposed regulations up on Beacon Hill to make this sort of a statewide type of situation as some other states have done. Senator Keenan's office did send back members of ONR some various materials to look through. We have also reached out to the chamber, and I know we do have a response from Attorney Croha, who I believe chairs the Braintree Chamber. And we do have open tonight up to public comment. And I do see that there are some folks that are here tonight, and I understand or believe that they may have some comments to make. And that's sort of, I think, in a nutshell, is kind of where we stand with this right now. So with that said, I would first open this up to any thoughts and comments from members of the public. And Clerk Semino, just from a technical standpoint, I believe everyone that I see is considered a panelist. So everyone who wanted to talk could be called upon and talk. Is that accurate?
So we have the attendees as well.
Oh, we do have attendees as well. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes, we do. So with that said, what would be the best way for the attendees to get you notice if they did want to talk, Clerk Semino?
So they can request to be brought over to, be a panelist. And so right now, let's see what we have.
I can see that we have, I believe, we have like three or four people that are already a panelist. I see that there's another about 7 attendees on the list of it.
Yeah. Now, can the attendees raise their hand if anybody wants to speak? Or they can call my phone number, my cell phone.
Okay. So if they want to, please.
So the phone number to call or text me if you want to be promoted to a panelist to be able to speak. They are able to raise their hand. So now I can allow them to talk.
Okay. So with that said, I do see that the first hand raised from the public was by Michael Kavanaugh. So I would just ask any attendees who did wish to speak, if you could please introduce yourself before you start to speak, and then we'll hear you out in this public comment period. So I would first turn to Clerk Semino.
Why don't I just give them my phone number in case they can't raise their hand? So it's 339-987-2726. Text or call me if you have any problems raising your hand. All
right. So with that said, Michael Kavanaugh, your hand was raised first. Michael, would you like to comment on the proposed single-use plastic bag bylaw?
Yeah, sure would. Thanks for having me. So I'll introduce myself. I'm the president of Sustainable Braintree. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, for those who don't know, local environmental advocacy group. I'm also joined by our Vice President, Rachel Horak, who's also a panelist. So we've had some time to look over the ordinance language, and by and large, it's there's a lot of good language in here. So I actually, if possible, I'd like to share my screen. Is that possible?
I think Clerk Semino will help you out with that technical aspect.
Yes, one moment. Okay, you should be able to now.
All right. All right, you seeing that?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, sir.
So just, I'm kind of a visual person, so I wanted to kind of put some of the components of the ordinance, even though it's not very long, into a PowerPoint format. So, and a lot of this stuff is right out of the ordinance. Anything that's in blue text here is right out of the ordinance. So, the intent of it is to protect the public health, safety, welfare, and the environment, and including, a recognition that single-use plastic bags have significant impacts on the environment, including contributing to potential death of aquatic land animals and by ingestion entanglement, contributing to pollution of the natural environment, creating a burden on our solid waste collection and recycling facilities, clogging storm drains, and requiring the use of millions of barrels of oil in their production. So this is in the language of the ordinance. But furthermore, I would just want to put out a few more things, and just to put this in context, that plastic bags are the third largest type of litter from land-based sources on U.S. coasts. This is from the EPA, and only about 5.2% of plastic bags in the U.S. are actually recycled. So this is a big problem, not just in the U.S. but elsewhere. But we can do something about it here. Plastic bags in use have a very short lifespan. They don't biodegrade. They do break down over tens to thousands of years and become microplastics, which are a big problem. there's over 100 billion plastic shopping bags used in the U.S. alone each year. So it's a massive issue. As most of you know, if this single-use plastic ordinance does go into effect, we'll be in good company. Over 146 Massachusetts cities and towns have implemented such ordinances to regulate the use of single-use plastic shopping bags. So we'll be in good company. A couple of key components of this from our reading of it, goals of the plastic bag ordinance, and I think these are important to point out. Again, the language is good. The purpose of the bylaw is to protect the town's unique natural beauty and its water and natural resources by eliminating single-use plastic checkout bags, which, if any of you have participated in cleanups like we have on the Manacoot River or on Braintree Beautification Day in the past, they get up in the trees, they get in the water. It's a real nasty problem. So eliminating those single-use plastic bags, but I think even more importantly, what ordinances of this type are intended to do is to promote the use of reusable bags, not to promote the use of paper bags, although paper bags are one of the alternatives in the ordinance, but really to make the point that what people should be doing is bringing their own bags from home and using those in the store, and they should be rewarded for that. A couple of other key things that we saw in here, the key definitions, the most important definitions, is the definition of a recyclable paper bag, which is good because it requires a certain percentage of post-consumer content. So that's a good thing. And the definition of a reusable checkout bag, which is this handled bag that is designed to be reused and is at least 4 mils in thickness. And I think one other thing to talk about is the definition of thin film single-use plastic bag, which importantly identifies some of the common materials that are used to create thin film single-use bags, like HDPE and LDPE, and LLDPE and PVC and PET. So I think that what this is covering all the correct bases. I think there's some small tweaks that probably could be made to this to make it just a little bit better. Like, for example, all these materials on here, basically making sure that those don't get used as single-use plastic bags, for example. And then the regulations of the ordinance to basically the way it's worded here is correct. We did run this by some folks at the Sierra Club, and we did actually invite them to give a little bit of overview and commentary as well, because we're just volunteers. They're the experts, and they deal with this on a regular basis, and they've worked with a lot of different towns to do that. So I believe that someone from Sierra Club is on the call, and I think I'd like to ask for them to probably raise their hand as well. I think it is Clint, if you can see him in the participant list.
Yes.
But Rachel, before we turn it over, did I miss anything on there?
You didn't miss anything, and I'll just add that this is only the first step that Braintree citizens have to help curb microplastics and pollution, which is a worldwide problem. And it has the potential to catalyze broader waste awareness in the general public, which I think is an important first step.
Okay.
And Clint Richmond would be our next speaker if possible.
So what I'll do is, before we turn over to Mr. Richmond, I do see his hand is raised. I'll just see if any of the counselors on O&R first have any sort of questions or follow-up to that with you two folks, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Richmond. So with that said, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Shasha, or Councilor Mackin, any sort of follow-up to that?
No, I'll wait till all members of the public speak first.
Thank you, Councilor Mackin. Councilor Flaherty?
I feel the same way. I'm content to let the experts speak first, and then I will ask questions.
And Councilor Shasha?
I agree with the previous two councilors.
All right, thank you very much. So with that said, Mr. Cavan, I don't know if Mr. Richmond would need your presentation up, but I would ask if at all possible, if you could email your PowerPoint. I know it's relatively brief, but I think there is some good information in it.
Yep.
If you at some point could email that over to Clerk Semino and she could distribute it to members of ONR as well as the full council at some point.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you. With that said, I would turn to the next person who raised their hand, who would be Clint Richmond.
Thank you. Should I be on video or not?
That is completely your call, sir.
I'm happy to be on video, but I don't see that as an option on my screen.
Okay, that is completely fine. We can hear you just fine.
Well, I don't mind being on video. I don't know how it worked out. I used the wrong invite perhaps, but so anyway, my name is Clint Richmond. I don't have the privilege of being a resident of Braintree, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I thank the Sustainable Braintree for agreeing to for reaching out, because I have been involved with this issue since 2012, and as Mr. Kavanaugh said, there's 146 communities that already have these similar rules in place, and there are others who are also in process in the same way that Braintree is. A lot of the communities that have been leading this effort have been coastal communities, such as Braintree. So it's certainly pertinent for you to be involved in this. You don't want your plastic bags and your microplastics going, directly into the ocean. In terms of the specifics of this proposed ordinance itself, as Mr. Kavanaugh stated, I thought the outline of the ordinance was strong. There are 2 or 3 changes that could be considered that are kind of best practices in some cases from other communities. And I'm also cognizant of the fact that there are some tweaks that you could make that would make the ordinance easier to implement. So, for example, I don't know, and might actually help to return to Mr. Kavanaugh's presentation, but the definition of a single-use bag requires a measurement, which I don't think is necessary and sort of gets in the way of implementation. The other is the exception for keeping existing bags, those thin film plastic bags, as an option for people who might prefer it, who are disabled or have some sort of accessibility need. I can say that I'm not aware of any law that does that in Massachusetts. I appreciate the intent, and I've reached out to some of my colleagues at the Sierra Club to confirm that in other states that those that have passed laws at the state level, like we can't review every single local ordinance, which are in the hundreds, it does not have such an exception. So I appreciate that someone might think it would be a good idea to still have those bags available, but it's just no other jurisdiction has seen the need to do that. And, so maybe there's some further discussion that could be had within the community about what the alternatives might be, because we're trying to get rid of these bags, not keep them around even behind the counter. I think it just creates enforcement problems. It can create, as well as misuse. I mean, you'd have to sort of monitor them. You'd have to say, well, how many bags would be enough for this community? Who would make that decision, and how would they audit that those limits are being followed? Anyway, you can start to see that there's a number of complications that could result from that. We need to make a clean break from plastic, and plastic bags weren't invented for the disabilities community. Most of us are old enough to remember that a time before plastic bags, or maybe some of us, maybe I'm speaking for myself, since you can't see my video, but anyway, I certainly remember it from my childhood and even adulthood, not really seeing plastic bags. So with a lot of these environmental threats, we want to go back to more traditional materials and traditional ways of doing things. So I just think that it's just going to be too difficult to enforce and will not lead to the desired outcome. And then the final one that's been done in cities, which you have the privilege of doing, is to add a fee to the bags, to any bag, so that you're not giving away bags willy-nilly, whether they're single-use bags, reusable bags. And in Boston, they have a 5-cent fee, and in Cambridge and Newton, they have a 10-cent fee. And in, I'm trying to, there's one other city that has a fee, and I think it's 10 cents. So, and that's so that the merchants can recoup the cost of paper bags. We're trying to discourage consumption and discourage overuse. So that's something that I think should at least be discussed. You know, obviously there are many cities that haven't passed that, but it is built into proposed state legislation, and I'd like to comment on that for just a minute. As the Sierra Club's policy lead for plastics and toxics and solid waste, the fee on paper bags will be part of any state solution, I think, at this point. There are many technical problems with the current version in this session of the state plastic bag ban, and the Sierra Club and other environmental advocates who've been working on this for a long time, such as Mass Purg and Surfrider Foundation and so forth, are not in favor of the current version. So unless radical changes are made to it, I don't see it being passed anytime soon. So we're encouraging localities that have the ability to do so to pass this kind of legislation to support the state legislation. And the more they're like this one, which is a good one, the better the state law will be. So we're seeing, no one has a law that's like the current proposed state language. And I think if, the Sierra Club will oppose it in its current form. So I don't really think it's going anywhere anytime soon in its current form. And as you may know from our friends and colleagues in the legislature, there's never as much activity as we would like to see, no matter which constituency we might be representing. It's the environmental community, the business community. The level of activity, the number of actual bills is fairly low. There have been indications that, there's recognition that we're falling behind compared to peer states, many of which are in New England, who've passed single-use plastics laws. But, and we haven't passed any, there's talk about a styrofoam bill, there's talk about the bag bill. There's some more ambitious bills. There's a whole set of bills that are related just to this area. So I hope that there'll be something soon, and I hope that there'll be strong laws, but just to reiterate, I would strongly urge you to pass your law here in Braintree. And a lot of your neighbors, particularly here in Eastern Massachusetts, you saw from Mr. Kavanaugh's map, are already doing this. So it'll kind of help close it up. And those are sort of the bulk of my comments. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Richmond. We appreciate the Sierra Club's position, and we appreciate the information you provided. And thank you to Mr. Kavanaugh and Borak as well for your information tonight. With that said, I'm just looking at our list of participants, and it does appear that my next hand is from Crystal Evans. So Ms. Evans, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then we hear from you as well.
Hey, I'm Crystal Evans. I know most of you here. I actually went to school for environmental science, but I'm also a person with a disability who sees big drawbacks in banning paper bags. I've talked to several counselors about this, and I think we need to step back and look at how this could negatively impact people and what we can do to push the use of reusable bags, even more so than paper bags, which still have environmental impact, in a way that's not going to be harmful for seniors, people with disabilities, as well as low-income residents of our community and those that don't drive. I know in Braintree, we are still very much a minority of the community, but it's a lot harder to get your groceries home in paper bags if you walk or if you're in a wheelchair, but it's much harder if you're like using a cane or a walker to be able to carry anything. The advantage of the plastic bags is it can be tied around mobility devices in ways that you can't do that with paper bag without handles. adding candles to paper bags can be extremely cost prohibitive to a lot of small businesses. I'm not opposed to a bag ban, but I just think we need to stop and look for solutions to make sure that we're not marginalizing certain groups of residents before we move forward on this. I talked to Michael earlier as well, in addition to several counselors who reached out to me, but I was going to suggest this topic go on the Disability Commission agenda for next month as well, and have Michael come representing Sustainable Braintree, so we can really talk through some of the people that will be impacted and what we can do to serve the residents. For me, as a wheelchair user, the reusable bags that you can get for like 99 cents at the grocery store or, you know, Marshall's, any of those places, the straps are made for over your shoulder for comfort of ambulatory people. But when you put them on a wheelchair, it drags on your wheels and it tears right through the bottom of the bag immediately. Which is also problematic when there's so much effort that goes into these reusable bags, and environmental impact for it to last when use is a problem. The bags that work better for me and a lot of other wheelchair users I've talked to, they're flip and tumble and they roll up into a little ball and they're more like an actual plastic bag, they're nylon. However, a lot of people with disabilities or low-income individuals that are out on public transit and would find something similar to a plastic bag as useful. These are $13 a piece. If you're going grocery shopping and you need to load up a bunch of bags, these don't hold that much. And I mean, it could easily be 7 bags times $13. And I've got people in my neighborhood that get under $800 a month income. And I'm like, for people like that, it would be financially detrimental. I had asked counselors earlier, like, are there options where we could fund some sort of bag for people that genuinely need to have a stash of bags to be able to go to the grocery store, whether it's seniors, whether it's people with disabilities, whether it's low-income individuals in our community who also are using public transit. I've seen a big shift. I frequent Boston outside of COVID. Via public transit. And as soon as they implemented the bag ban in Boston, it became really hard to navigate the T as a wheelchair user. Because when you go to board and there's people there with all their paper bags lined up on the floor in front of them, everybody has to then move their bags. I didn't run into this previously with plastic bags because often people would just set them in a pile next to them or just keep them right around their wrists. But you can't do that with paper bags. So it's like there's public transit dynamics where those that do use public transit to shop, grocery shop, it makes it a lot harder. So I just don't want these issues to be forgotten while we're trying to address environmental stuff. I think we need to also equally address the disparities and the impact it will have to select members of the community and work on solutions to what can we implement to make it easier for these individuals before we remove what they've always considered something easily accessible to go grocery shopping independently.
Thank you, Ms. Evans, for your comments. With that said, do any other attendees wish to raise their hand? Just taking a peek at the list right now.
Mr. Chair.
Solicitor Todd.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everybody for their thoughtful comments this evening. It was the item that we had talked about the last time before this committee was the importance of hearing from all of the stakeholders and those that would be impacted before we moved forward. And I think Ms. Evans' suggestion to put this on the next Commission on Disabilities agenda is a great one. I also think, and I don't know, Mr. Chair, if they were contacted, but the Department of Elder Affairs is also another segment of our population that I think could be impacted by a change such as this. And as I understand it, the chamber is not taking a position because there was a split in the membership. And I think that the impact of something like this is not going to be the same across the board for businesses, which is reflected, I think, in that determination from the chamber. And there might be a greater impact on small businesses than there are on larger businesses because of the cost associated with something like this. So I appreciate the discussion. I think it's really important to make sure that we're engaging with those that would be impacted. So if a if a ban like this does move forward, it does so in a way that's not going to have some of those or any of those negative impacts that have been discussed this evening, while also preserving and continuing to preserve the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Solicitor Taub. And just as you wrap it for anyone, for the counselors and folks listening at home, we reached out to various folks tonight if they wanted to sort of make any sort of comments or suggestions in regards to this ordinance. The Braintree Chamber of Commerce, who is currently chaired by Attorney Kim Crohat, did, as Solicitor Taub indicate, provide a written response. Ms. Crohat couldn't be here tonight. I believe that all of the councilors have received this, but just for purposes of the record, she wrote, "Dear councilors, we write to you with respect to the proposed single-use plastic bag reduction bylaw up for discussion at tonight's December 13th, 2021 Ordinance and Rules Committee meeting. Thank you to Councilor Ringus for inviting us to participate in the discussion. We have reached out to our membership and requested feedback on the proposed bylaw. We received mixed feedback from the Braintree business community, with almost a clear split of businesses that support passage of the ordinance for its environmental benefits, and other businesses that oppose the ordinance based on increased cost to business and consumer. Based on the split feedback from our members, the Braintree Chamber does not take a position on the proposed ordinance at this juncture. Thank you for your time and diligence in review. Braintree Chamber of Commerce, Kim Crohat, Chair." So that is the official position of the chamber at this point, is that they are taking no position due to a split in membership. With that said, before I turn it over to the members of the ONR subcommittee to comment or ask questions, does anyone from the public wish to raise their hand? Just reviewing the list. At this point, I do not see anyone further raising their hand. Clerk Semino, has anyone reached out to you via phone, via text?
No, no one.
Okay. So with that said, I will now open it up to comments and questions for members of the council. I'd first turn to Vice President Councilor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a few things. These will be kind of scattered because it seems like we are going to seek some more input from the Disability Commission and the seniors, and so I will not end up voting on this. So I'm just going to kind of throw a bunch of things out there. So overall, I think we will go ahead with this, whether we do it sooner or it's kind of forced on us by the state. I like the idea of going ahead with it sooner and doing it our way. I have traveled a lot in some of the neighboring states, and I will say the fee on bags is very effective. If you go into a grocery store in Connecticut, you will see an overwhelming majority of people coming in with reusable bags. You will see people coming out with an armload of groceries just to avoid the 5 cents that they have to pay for the plastic bag. You can literally see people with less than a bag's worth of things coming out with items in their arms because there's just some principle in them that makes them not want to pay that 5 cents for the bag. So, I think it's important that we hear from a lot of the affected groups. I also wonder if the Chamber of Commerce might be able to provide a little more insight into the businesses that, the half of the businesses that did not support this amendment. As Solicitor Taub pointed out, if they're all the small businesses in town, it makes a difference to us, right? We don't want to do anything that disproportionately hurts small businesses that doesn't hurt large businesses as much. And I think it would help to get a little more insight into who the businesses are that had issues, and maybe they could come speak to the committee. And the last thing I would say is maybe as we're looking at this, it might make sense to do a phased approach where we look at not an outright ban, but say the imposition of fees for 6 months or a year, which gives people time to still have access to plastic bags while they're phased out of stores. People will, accumulate their own reusable bags, and more discussion can be had. But then it's part of a longer term plan over probably around the same time that a state ban is coming into play, that we would be in a better position to fully eliminate plastic bags. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Shasha. Councilor Flaherty, you were next with your hand raised.
Thank you. So, as I was listening to the Girl Scouts talk when we were hearing their presentation, they did a wonderful job of describing the environmental impacts of plastic bags on our landfills and in our oceans, and the litter that they create in our neighborhoods. And all of these things are very compelling to me. But I think the process that we're faced with now is contending with the actual nuts and bolts of construing an ordinance that will effectively reduce all of these things in our community and in the world that we're part of. So I was very pleased to hear that the Sierra Club felt like this was a strong start as far as the language is concerned. But I think that we do need to address the concern where, if other municipalities haven't given consideration to the impact of plastic bag reduction bylaws to the disabled community, then I think Braintree should be proud to be the first. But that said, the language that's included here in this bylaw does strike me as problematic for two particular reasons. One is, people who have mobility issues don't necessarily carry ID cards proving that they have mobility issues, and it's not always immediately obvious who does and who doesn't, because you can be a person who's a little unsteady on your feet but not necessarily be in a wheelchair or with a cane or a walker or some other kind of apparatus. So I think that creates a situation where grocery stores, will just, if it's an enforcement or how do we exercise this problem? Because how do we eliminate the plastic bag problem if we continue to offer plastic bags to anybody who wants them? And how can we tell people whether they have a disability or not? Right? That's not the supermarket checkout's job to tell somebody whether they have a mobility issue or not. So I don't want to impose that on them, but I also don't want to ignore it. So in conversations, it seems like one thing that Braintree might be able to do is, especially if we employed something like a phased approach, as Councilor Shasha was saying, where we can create an opportunity for the town in some way to offer nylon bags of the variety that Ms. Evans was describing, that are what people need to be able to carry their goods with a reusable bag. And different agencies for distribution of those kinds of bags were discussed. The Commission on Disabilities was brought up. The Sustainable Braintree was brought up. I think that these are organizations that may have, despite I know that Ms. Evans was describing a $13 price tag on those kinds of bags, but I bought mine from IKEA for $1 a piece. And if I can find it at IKEA for $1 a piece, then anyone who's buying them in bulk can find them for far less than that. I think it's a solvable problem, but I think it's something that we have to address in the language, because if we keep it as it is, we immediately create a problem with the impact that this is able to have. And so I don't want to ignore that. And I also, I think it is worth having this brought forward to the Commission on Disabilities and also to the Department of Elder Affairs, as has been suggested. But I would further suggest that it should be brought before, or we should have somebody from the DPW come and speak to us, because I know that one of the big costs of plastic bags is associated with the fact that they get tangled up in recycling equipment, and that creates delays and damages apparatus and overall makes recycling far more expensive. regardless of the material that you're looking to recycle. So that is a third agency that I would look to have share their input with us as we work through how to make this an effective bylaw in Braintree. So that's what I'll leave it at for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for your comments, your analysis. I would next turn to Councilor Mackin, who has his hand raised.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be quick. It seems like, we're moving in the direction of tabling this in order to get more input. And I'll just echo what Councilor Sasha said. My top thought was the members of the business community who were opposed to this. I would like to see some more of their, detail of their reasonings and why. Like, our business community had a rough couple of years, so I would like all that to be taken into consideration. And thank you for everybody who came and spoke tonight too. That's it.
Thank you, Councilor Mackin. And I would just echo what Councilor Mackin just said. Thank you to Ms. Evans, to Mr. Kavanaugh, to Ms. Horak, to Mr. Richmond for your comments. Thank you to Solicitor Taub for your input as well. And obviously the suggestions that we've gotten tonight of further folks to engage in this conversation. I think the one thing that we saw, and obviously thank you to, although she couldn't be here tonight, Attorney Crowha and the Chamber for at least weighing this among their membership and getting some feedback. I think what we've seen tonight is something great, which is that we have various folks that are coming at this from different angles. And coming at it from different angles, everyone is making suggestions of working together to find sort of a common end. And ultimately, I think that's what we want to do in these subcommittees, and we want to do as a town with many of the issues that face us, is acknowledge that we're going to have some differences instead of attacking the folks that have those differences. Instead, kind of work together to find different ways to solve an issue. I would sort of say that, I talked to Ms. Evans today. And obviously, some of the issues that she brought up with mobility impaired people, especially folks, which I wasn't even considering, folks with walkers or canes. That's an entirely different situation. So I appreciate her comments on those and some of the candor that she was able to bring to the conversation in regards to those issues. And I think Councilor Flaherty hit the nail on the head. That just because another community hasn't done it doesn't mean that we can't, and maybe we should be the first. To sort of look at what we can do in sort of that regard. I am very interested in hearing from more members of the business community. Like we said, a large corporation like a Shaw's or a Stop and Shop might be able to offset that cost or absorb that much more effectively than a smaller mom and pop convenience store or other small businesses that we want to attract to Braintree. And a part of the fabric of what Braintree is some of these smaller businesses. And like we've said at various meetings, it's the smaller businesses, it's the locally owned businesses that are truly contributing to our town. They're the ones sponsoring 5Ks. They're the ones that are at chamber events. They're the ones that are sort of, sponsoring our teams. So I think it's important that we're not overly burdening our small businesses, especially as we come out of sort of this crisis that was COVID and all of the issues that they dealt with financially and sort of trying to keep some of them trying to keep their businesses afloat. So I think the perspective that some of those businesses bring to the table is important as well. So all in all, I think this was a great discussion. I thank everyone. I thank Councilor O'Brien for initially sort of proposing this. Prior to, it seems pretty straightforward. This is going to be tabled in a couple of moments. But before we get to that, is Solicitor Taub, would you happen to know if this language that Councilor O'Brien has proposed, do we know if legal has actually offered an opinion on it yet? I didn't have in my notes whether we did or not.
So I don't think that we've provided an official legal opinion on this, which we can certainly do, but this does mirror a lot of the language we're seeing around the state and also pulls in some way from the language that was proposed on the state level. So I don't anticipate that would be a problem. I know there was a question raised earlier today about for this purpose, are we a city or a town? Because it makes a difference for whether or not, we can charge the fee. And I think typically that kind of language defaults to the type of government. So where we are a mayor and a council form of government, we would be deemed a city. So we would likely be able to charge a fee.
Okay, thank you very much. Could I just ask that, obviously, again, it seems like this will be tabled for further discussion and referral to other folks. Could we get yourself or Assistant Solicitor Huff to give us some sort of an official legal opinion for the next O&R meeting, whoever that is made up of?
Absolutely. I think initially, like I mentioned earlier, we wanted to make sure we were engaging with the right people, so that what we're opining on is potentially a more final version. But we'll certainly do that for the existing, and then also continue to track for any changes that might get made throughout the process.
Thank you very much, Solicitor Tubb. Anything further from any of the councilors? Councilor Sciascia, anything further? Councilor Flaherty, anything further?
No.
And Councilor Mackin, I can't see you. Anything further? I'll take that as a note. Okay.
No.
With that, oh, there he is. And with that said, Councilor Sciascia, do we have a motion to table 20034, Councilor O'Brien 8.800, single-use plastic bag reduction bylaw or any action related thereto?
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilor Sciascia. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilor Flaherty. Clerk Semino, a roll call vote, please.
Councilor Ringus,
Aye.
Councilor Sciascia,
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty,
Yes.
Councilor Mackin. 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Clerk Semino, and that item is tabled. Thank you to the folks again who came, stayed on the line and spoke with us, and we're sorry that we did take it slightly out of order in the agenda. Feel free to stick around with you folks, or enjoy the rest of your night. We have one further item before us tonight, and that would be still under old business, 03121, Councilor Mackin, Municipal Oversight Committee, or taking up any action relative thereto. With that said, this was an item that was proposed by Councilor Mackin. Sorry, I'm just scanning down on my notes here. And this was tabled at a previous meeting. I believe Councilor Mackin was actually taken ill or couldn't be here for that night. So do I have a motion to take off of the table item 03121, Councilor Mackin, Municipal Oversight Committee, or any action related thereto?
Motion to take item 03121 off the table.
I have a motion by Councilor Sciascia. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilor Flaherty. Clerk, a roll call vote to take the item off the table.
Ringus,
Aye.
Councilor Sciascia,
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty,
Yes.
Councilor Mackin.
Aye.
4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Clerk. That is unanimous. With that said, as we haven't had any real discussion on this, again, because I think we tabled it immediately, Councilor Mackin, would you like, as this is your proposal, would you like to sort of address the committee on what this proposal is and what you're looking to do?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Ringus. Members of the O&R committee, this has kind of been on and off the agenda for some time, so we're all somewhat familiar with it. And, quick recap, this originally grew out of the idea going over the Peterson Pool and what happened for years, which we don't have to get into the history of that now. I thought it was appropriate to create an oversight committee to find out what happened there. As I put more thought into the idea, I realized, while I think it's important to find out what happened, only looking backward doesn't do us a whole lot of good. So I thought, expand it into a full municipal oversight committee to also be used for any future projects run by the town. So the idea was just create another committee for the council, as we have several of 3 members to be appointed by the council president. So, for any, I think oversight's an important thing, and it's one of the responsibilities of the council. And, this originally grew out of the idea from the previous Peterson Pool fiasco, and the ball was dropped. So one of the items I did have on there was to kind of look back and actually do a detailed report of what went wrong there, which has never been done. And I've been long been of the opinion, we should run the town more like a business. And in business, if there was ever a large amount of time and money wasted, you would look into the reasons why. So to make sure it didn't happen again, you wouldn't just ignore it. And then again, we have many large projects such as South Middle School coming up. I think it would be, a good step to show residents that, fiscal responsibility is something to take seriously. So anyway, that's, it's pretty much the logic behind it. It's pretty straightforward, the motion. Yeah, that's it for me. Welcome any input.
Thank you, Councilor Mackin. First, I'll turn to the committee members. Councilor Shasta or Councilor Flaherty, you can just physically raise your hand. Any sort of comments or questions? Councilor Flaherty.
So the question I have has to do with the stipulation that it would be every construction project over $50,000 in value, because that would be an enormous number of things. I mean, I think like window installation or road construction. Is that really your intention, Councilor Mackin?
Councilor Mackin, if you want to respond.
No, it was not. I would be willing to up the dollar value there. That's open to change. No, that was not to oversee every DPW project, etc.
Councilor Flaherty, anything further or further comments or questions?
Well, up the dollar content, the dollar amount to what? And are we excluding DPW projects? Like, are we really just looking at projects that are completed by contractors, or are we looking at things that are completed by the town as well?
I mean, I guess it could be essentially whatever we want. Anything, if town money is being spent for the project. So we can make it, it could be 100,000, 200,000. Again, the thing I had in mind was based off the previous Peterson Pool, which again would have been a facility, South Middle School, which is a building. But it really could be, it could be used however the committee wanted to use it. I mean, if the committee saw fit to look at a certain project, even if it was roads with a large amount of money, it could. It doesn't mean it would be required to. It would be up for the members of the committee to decide.
I guess my question to the mayor's office then would be like, to what extent is the council permitted to do this? We had a problem with the permission of the council to do this for the Peterson Pool, because that was going to be governed just by the mayor. And also, I think that the East Middle School has a committee that is appointed to oversee its construction as it stands, but this would apply to many other things. And I guess I want to know what the limitations are.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for the question. I would defer to Solicitor Todd for her opinion on that.
Thank you, Chairman Ringus. And also, before I answer, we do have Jim Arsenault with us this evening, Director of the Department of Public Works, and I won't pretend to speak for him, but he also shared some of those concerns that a $50,000 threshold would implicate a significant number of pretty regularly performed DPW projects around town, and that there was potential for delay, but also potential for kind of blurring of the lines that the charter sets forth as far as responsibilities are concerned. So my office did not provide a memo on this particular motion, but it did provide two previous motions on what Councilor Mackin indicated was kind of the predecessor motion to this document, and set forth kind of the relevant, or what we saw as relevant charter provisions, specifically as they define the division of powers between the executive and the legislative branches. And so while the council does have the right by charter to conduct investigations into affairs of the town and conduct of any town agency, there are limitations in what they can do because those are powers vested directly with the mayor. So, I think it would be important in order for this committee to be effective. I think it would be important to spell out in a little bit more detail what exactly those responsibilities would entail, so that you don't find yourselves kind of at every turn looking for approval. Is this okay? Is this within the bounds of the charter? Would this be inappropriate? I think just for efficiency's sake. And then I think that reevaluating or adjusting that dollar value so that you're capturing what I think are those large scale projects, based on kind of the history and Councillor Mackin's comments, if I'm understanding them correctly, so that the focus the committee's time would be appropriately and more efficiently spent looking at those larger areas rather than, when we're repaving a roadway or making adjustments to a sidewalk that may implicate that threshold. So I think that it's a fine line between executive and legislative. I think there are powers that the council or council members currently have that could accomplish the same, but I appreciate what Councillor Mackin is looking to do here this evening. I just think it might need a little bit of fine tuning to make sure that it can serve effectively.
At this point, Bob has answered Councillor Flaherty's question. So Councillor Flaherty hasn't yielded the floor yet. So Councillor Flaherty, I would turn back to you. I do see Councillor Mackin, you have your hand up, and I will let you respond. But I would, at this point, Councillor Flaherty, you still have the floor.
Well, I think I'm looking for some clarity on the kinds of projects that this really would investigate. For example, like we just authorized $419,000 to be spent of community preservation funding to resurface and improve the drainage on the courts outside Doherty Gym. That's substantially more money than $50,000. We expect that to be completed by a mixture, I think, of outside contractors with some of the work being done in-house. And I don't know, like just as a for example, how would this committee treat that project?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Mackin, your hand is up, and I will turn the floor over to you for the second time. Councillor Sasha, I will turn to you at some point as well.
Thank you, Councillor Ringus. And, Director Arsenal, I appreciate you joining us. As far as the dollar value that was stipulated, I never want to burden the DPW department. I would have no objections to that being raised by a larger value. Then to Solicitor Tobbs' comments about the motion being written rather narrowly, the previous motion I had written for the Peterson Pool Oversight Committee, we were in here, and I was essentially told it was too broad. There was too much stuff in there. It should be, the feedback I was given is the motion should be made much looser, and so that's what I came back and did. And now I'm told that there needs to be more detail in it. So yeah, you can understand that a little bit of frustration with that, because obviously the council has created many committees in the past, so they're very is there a lot of details or not much detail? Because I feel like clearly we've had two different answers here. Now to Councilor Flaherty's question, which I feel like I kind of answered the first time you brought it up, but it will be for the members of the committee to decide if they wanted to take a close look at the project and review it. It doesn't mean we can rewrite the language. The committee does not have to provide an review of everything, but it would have the authority or the ability to do that if it wanted to. So again, I think those decisions would be left up to whoever the members of the committee are. So that will remain my answer to that point. And with that, I yield.
Thank you, Councillor Mackin. Councillor Sasha for the first time. Or maybe
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councillor Mackin on some pieces of this, that we are providing a level of scrutiny to this committee that we don't with other committees. I had done some analysis of our committees way back, and since the rules are going to be updated in January by 9 people that do not include me, I'm going to read a couple of things that I found. Some of our committees, like Education, Library, have met. I've seen minutes for 2 meetings that were 10 years ago and have never met since. The Community Planning Committee, I don't see that it's ever met. So definitely, if there's an appetite for a committee that's going to review large projects and it's actually going to meet, then this would be a far better use of counselors' time than some of these committees that we get assigned to that have never met and may never meet. I think the issue with the money might not really be an issue, because if it's a committee of the council, then nothing would go to this committee that is not referred to it, right? So there doesn't need to be a specific dollar amount. Any counselor, if there's a specific project that somebody wants to have this committee review, they would be able to refer that project to the committee, regardless of what the dollar amount was, which would mean that not every single project from $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 would end up at this committee by default. And then I think the language that was of concern last time was some very direct language about the committee being able to kind of instruct the mayor's office as to what to do with these projects. And I don't see any of that in here. I think, the only line in here that I could raise a question on is the third line under responsibilities, the report on the Peterson pool, only because we are essentially referring something to a committee that hasn't been set up yet. Whereas if we left that out, that could be referred to the committee on day one, and it would have the same effect. But otherwise, if we change that dollar amount, I really don't see an issue with this, and I would support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sciascia. Councilor Mackin, any follow-up to Councilor Sciascia's comments?
No, I think, as Councilor Sciascia always has excellent insights. It's fair enough to find out the details. So as far as making a motion to establish a report, I would be fine with that. And also, he's right that things do get referred to committee. They're not just automatically sent there. So I do think that addresses some of the concerns raised as well. So thank you, Councilor Sciascia.
Thank you, Councilor Mackin. I know that Mr. Arsenault has joined us tonight. And based on him giving his time, Mr. Arsenault, I didn't know if you had any sort of comments or questions that you wanted to present to the subcommittee.
I think that the comments that have been made by Nicole and others about it would be a large, if every project that we had to go before this committee, it would basically shut us down. So if it's just going to be where certain projects, individual projects once in a while that want to be looked at, I don't have an issue with that at all. But we couldn't have all of them because it would really make us not able to do our job. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Arsenault. Before I sort of offer any comments or questions, anything further from Ms. Taub?
No, only that it was not my intent to cause confusion or frustration. Just trying to make sure what gets put forward is able to work effectively. So I apologize for that if that was the sentiment I left you with, Councilor Mackin.
No, we're good.
So before then I will leave it just to the three councilors if they have any sort of comments or questions. Councilor Sciascia, anything further at this point? Of course, we could open the floor up again if need be. Councilor Flaherty, at this point, this juncture, anything further you wanted to add?
I have some concerns that this could significantly stall projects. And I'm just, in my own mind, I'm weighing the extent to which that is a potential outcome. For example, Councilor Sciascia makes a good point that things would get referred. And because of the language was, construction projects over $50,000 in value, I was thinking that it would apply to everything. So that's a worthy point. However, if someone was opposed to a project, a community preservation one that's the example that I used, but it could be anything, and referred that to the committee, it can be used as a stalling tactic, and I don't see any language in here that prevents that kind of abuse, and that is an item of concern for me.
Thank you. And before I speak, Councilor Mackin, anything further you wish to add?
No.
Thank you. So I think, again, great discussion tonight. I think, again, coming at it from different angles is the best way to approach every issue that we have before us. I do think that this is an important idea to pursue. And I say that for a couple of reasons. I think anytime you're doing anything, extra eyes never hurt. They always can bring a different level of observation, and just because I think something is being done in a perfect way doesn't mean that someone else isn't going to notice something. So I think anytime you put extra eyes on something, it's important. But of course, not in a way that makes everything grind to a halt either, because we don't want to we don't want to see things just completely stall out. So initially, I did have some concerns about that $50,000 mark, because there are so many things that could be implicated when you put sort of a threshold on it. But as we've talked about, these things are going to come, if we establish a committee like this, these things are going to come from a referral from someone on the council to be referred by the full council to this subcommittee. So I don't see it as being something where we're going to be looking at every single item that is $50,000 or more. So I don't see that being an issue, because as you said, Councilor Flaherty, an issue one could argue is that, oh, will this be used as a stalling tactic? But if, let's say, Dave Ringus was trying to stall something out and I was trying to refer something to this committee, the other 8 councilors on the council could vote against my referral, and then it wouldn't get referred over. So I think there is a check and balance even within the council of stopping that sort of action from happening. In terms of any monetary amount, I don't think we need a monetary amount. I don't think it should be 50,000. I don't think it should be 200,000. Because if the idea of this is to provide some sort of oversight, I think the oversight should be oversight that we are statutorily allowed to provide via state law that's applicable, via federal law that's applicable, and via what we are allowed to do via the provisions of the charter, which we've discussed in previous meetings as relates to the Peterson pool. I think the charter allows us a certain level of oversight, and it prohibits a certain level of oversight of where we can go and where we can't go. So the charter is sort of always our sort of founding law, much like the town council rules that this committee sort of worked through a couple of years ago, sort of guide the council. So I don't think you need to put any dollar amount on it. And the reason I say that is maybe it's a project that is $150,000 that somebody wants to take a look at. But it doesn't mean that we could have $1,000 project that we think is being done wrong. So I don't think there should be necessarily any maximum limit, nor do I think there should be any minimum limit. I think it just matters what gets referred. And I think the check and balance, like I said, exists there. I did a little typing while some of you were talking. I wasn't being rude as I turned away, and I just sort of worked on a little language. So what I've sort of looked at here is, and I would also note, because I just mentioned the rules of the council, which guide us. Rule 40, which is the rule as to special committees, does allow the town council to establish special committees. They can be authorized at any time by a majority vote of the council, and they shall be appointed by the president to consider such matters as the council may refer to them. So we are allowed to, under Rule 40, create various committees. I think Councilor Shasha mentioned I think it was prior to myself, and I think you folks being on the council, was the committee on planning community development, which I think you noted maybe hasn't ever met. But I think it was that was established through Rule 40. And I think none of us were on the council at that time. Going back even years past, I was at one point the District 5 councilor. The District 5 councilor prior to me was Councilor Michael Owens. And him and I believe Councilor Clifford, though I could be mistaken, I was on the school committee at the time. They used Rule 40 to create sort of a committee based on looking at some of the opioid stuff that was going on in town. So there is some historical reference that ordinance and rules or the council has created a special committee to look at different things, whether that be opiates or whether that be community and planning development. So I think the tradition is there. I think it's just defining it out, and like Solicitor Taub and Councilor Mackin said, not over defining it. I think the past thing that we were looking at that was eventually pulled off the table, Councillor Mackin, I think your previous Peterson Pool item, it kind of got too direct. There was too much going on. And that's why in the language that, as Councillor Sasha sort of indicated, the language that I'm going to read in a moment, I took out reference to the Peterson Pool because ultimately the council could refer, hey, let's look at the Peterson Pool, or hey, let's look at this. So what I had toyed with is that we could make some sort of a motion under Rule 40 that we establish a 3-member special committee to provide independent review and investigation of all town of Braintree managed construction projects as allowed via applicable charter provisions and relevant state and federal laws. The primary purpose of this committee is to ensure proper procedures are being followed, to ensure responsible spending of taxpayer money, and to establish reports of such. Each member will be a town councillor appointed by the council president. Councillor Mackin, do you think that would suffice and get to the root of what you're trying to do?
Yes, I have no objections. Thank you.
Councillor Sasha, would that get to the root and sort of alleviate any concerns that you might have?
I think that works for me.
Councillor Flaherty?
So perhaps, what if we said the objective would be an establishment of a 3-member committee to provide independent review of town of Braintree managed construction projects. So we'd be striking the word all. And then just instead of the last clause that you added, we put for which concern arises. In which case it would say establishment of a 3-member committee to provide independent review of town of Braintree managed construction projects for which concern arises. That would permit the council to refer any construction project, regardless of the price tag, to the committee for review for whatever the reason was, which I imagine would be included in the referral. And then the responsibilities and functions that you suggested are totally acceptable to me.
Okay, so let me just kind of work through this again. The establishment of a 3-member committee to provide independent review and investigation. I kind of liked the word "and investigation" because that's how we sort of put it. Of town of Braintree managed construction projects for which concern arises, as allowed via applicable charter provisions and relevant state and federal laws. The primary purpose of this committee is to ensure proper procedures are being followed, to ensure responsible spending of taxpayer money, and to establish reports of such. And even though this is a little redundant because Rule 40 already indicates the appointments are made by the president, I just put in each member will be a town councillor appointed by the council president, even though that is sort of already summed up in Rule 40. Council Flaherty, would that sort of go to what you just stated?
Yeah, the important thing for me was to strike the word all, and I thought it would be a little bit clarifying to add for which concern arises, but the last clause is allowed by the charter and its state laws. That certainly makes sense to me.
Councillor Sasha?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm okay with that language. I'm just looking at the language around our current committees, and they're all structured around the phrase may consider and report on all matters relating to, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm not sure if it's important to get that bit of language in here, or if that's something that we're comfortable just working out in the council, but they are more broad. They are all matters relating to whatever the topic is. And then, and any other matters referred to it by the council or council president.
Do you want to?
So that's more of a question than I don't know. Do we want to structure it? Do we want to structure the language the same as all of the other committees?
Why don't can you give me that language again real quick?
Okay. So I would say in this case, it would be something like the committee may consider and report on all matters relating to projects managed by the town of Braintree and any other matters referred to it by the council or council president. subject to state and federal laws in the charter.
So I'm just, bear with me. I don't know if anyone knows, fun fact, Dave Ringus types with 2 fingers. So just give me a second as I work through it. So I'll just verbalize this again. Establishment of the 3-member special committee, because special committees are what we are allowed to establish under Rule 40, to provide independent review, investigation of all matters relating to Braintree managed construction projects for which concern arises, as allowed via applicable charter provisions and relevant state and federal laws, as referred to it by the council and/or council president. The primary purpose of this committee to ensure proper procedures are being followed, to ensure responsible spending of taxpayer money, and to establish reports of such. Each member will be a town councilor appointed by the council president. Would that get to the heart of what you were saying there, Councilor Sciascia?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anything further?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Flaherty and Councilor Mackin, I'm not ignoring you as it was your proposal. I'm going to come to you last. Councilor Flaherty, anything further?
Does it matter whether you say all matters? I know it is as referred. Any matter might be better.
I think the only reason I said all is because I think we just cut and pasted that from the language that Councilor Sciascia read to me that's already included in all our other committees. So again, it's not going to be all, it's going to be all that are referred. So I don't necessarily have an issue with the word all there.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilor Mackin, anything further to add or any comments or questions?
Yeah, just one comment and possible change. And I appreciate everyone's input, and I do like where we are. I just want to make sure, one of my original intentions was to look at something that happened in the past. So I think most of the language is present tense and going forward. I just want to make sure that wouldn't, so I think you said proper procedures are being followed, maybe are being or / have been, just to I don't want it to be said, okay, it's can't look at something that already happened. It's just current events are looking forward. I don't know if I'm being nitpicky there, if the way it's currently written, if we don't think we'll see that problem, then I'm fine with leaving it as is, but does that make sense?
It does. I'm just reading through what I wrote again.
But with the exception of that, I appreciate all your feedback and input on this.
Could you just briefly sort of say that again? I know it's about where did you have the issue? Was it just the fact you're more looking to have the word pass somehow added in there?
Yeah, I think somewhere you said make sure proper procedures are being followed, and maybe we say are being followed or were followed. I don't have what you wrote in front of me, so I'm trying to kind of remember.
Yeah.
Do you get the point I'm trying to make?
I
trust your judgment to.
All right. So one more try, because my fingers are getting a little tired. If we said establishment of a 3-member special committee to provide independent review and investigation of all matters relating to town of Braintree managed construction projects for which concern arises and referred to it by the council and/or council president, as allowed via applicable charter provisions and relevant state and federal laws. The primary purpose of this committee is to ensure proper procedures are being followed, were followed on past projects, to ensure responsible spending of taxpayer money and to establish reports of such. Each member will be a town councillor appointed by the council president. Councillor Mackin, would that address what you were looking for there?
Indeed, it does.
All right, now of note, and I would just kind of put this out here because we haven't made any sort of official motion yet. Obviously, we have to be mindful of the charter when we're doing things like this. Obviously, the charter is the ultimate controlling authority, and the charter, we could refer something as a council. We have to be knowledgeable that, and something that, well, I'm sure a discussion will happen when this gets before the full council, if it gets before the full council tonight, is the fact that the charter always controls. And I think the other thing where we note the, state and federal laws, charter, that there are going to be times where the solicitor's office may tell us that we're in ongoing litigation or negotiation and we're not allowed to address certain things. But I think that's, this goes to the heart of what we're trying to do. I don't think it's overly broad nor overly narrow. I don't think it's positioned in a way that we're going to jam up the system too much, because obviously we're not looking to look at every sort of gas pipe installation. So I think this does cover the bases, and I think it is mindful of the concerns that both Solicitor Taub and Mr. Arsenal raised. And I'm sure there will be much more further discussion at the council before something like this is approved. But for tonight's purposes, I think it's a good place to be. Any further comments, Councilor Shasha?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I did see, I think, was that a hand motion or a scratch? That was a hand motion. All right. Solicitor Taub.
Thank you, Chairman Mingus. The only other factor I would note that we need to continue to be mindful of, and it's one I think that Councillor Flaherty first raised and Director Arsenault also identified, is the schedule, and making sure that the committee doesn't, or I guess that the committee is mindful of scheduling around projects and timelines and things of that nature. And also that depending on the project, there may be an existing committee or board in place that already also has some responsibility for that. And I would just take this opportunity to encourage not just the councilors, but members of the public that are still here with us this evening, that there are often other opportunities to engage and get educated or informed about projects through various other boards and committees that the town has and the school department has, and that so that there are opportunities that exists. And so perhaps an opportunity for this committee, if it's formed, to work with some of those existing committees as it moves forward and kind of evolves.
Thank you, Solicitor Taub. I think that is 100% accurate. I think it is, it's very easy for folks to get drawn into sometimes social media banter or rumor. And I think it is important that we get the information. And I do hope that a subcommittee like this would have the ability to help ensure residents that there is, again, a second or third set of eyes on something. I think it's worth noting, I think if you really look at where we stand in life right now, I think sort of distrust of the government is probably at an all-time high in terms of national, state, and local sort of level. That's for a variety of reasons. And I think the idea of folks wanting of what we used to call conspiracy theories from either a fringe right or fringe left or a special interest group, I think more and more the general public is having some distrust of government at all levels. And hopefully something like this, while being mindful of the other committees that exist and checking out what some of those boards are doing, I think this hopefully would give residents, who obviously residents are sort of the employers of the council, they elect us to serve their interests. Hopefully something like this would go to giving them sort of another level that these things are being looked at. So I do think it might have an important purpose, and if it is approved tonight, if it is approved by the full council, I think we can probably see where it goes. But I'm sure that when this does go to the full council, which if approved tonight or get a favorite recommendation tonight, close to the top, obviously I would encourage yourself to any further concerns that arise as you look at the language, to obviously present to the full council on that. Councillor Mackin, before I sort of make the motion, anything further to add as the person who proposed this?
No, I'm good. And again, thank you, everybody, for your input.
So Councilor Shasha, would you be all right if I read it and then you say as read or something like that?
I think we would have to do it that way.
All right. Do I have a motion for the establishment of a 3-member special committee to provide independent review and investigation of all matters relating to Town of Braintree managed construction projects for which concern arises and referred to it by the council and/or council president as allowed via applicable charter provisions and relevant state and federal laws? The primary purpose of this committee is to ensure proper procedures are being followed or followed in past projects, to ensure responsible spending of taxpayer money, and to establish reports of such. Each member will be a town councillor appointed by the council president. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the establishment of the committee as read by Chairman Ringus.
Thank you. I have a motion from Councilor Sasha. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilor Flaherty. Clerk Semino, can we have a roll call vote?
Councilor Ringus,
Aye.
Councilor Sasha,
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty,
Yes.
Councilor Mackin,
Aye.
4 in favor, 0 opposed.
And that is unanimous. And that is the last item on our agenda tonight. I would just note, as I did Councilor Connors, that I believe, unless there's another subcommittee I'm not aware of, this would be Councilor Sasha's final meeting with us as well. I know we did give you some accolades the other night, but obviously tonight is a prime example of what I spoke about during our full council meeting. Your attention to detail, your knowledge of zoning has been of utter importance and has been so well appreciated, especially as the vice president here, over some of the things that we've looked at over the past 2 years. And I know we are definitely going to see you again, because I know the inclusionary amendment is something you're going to follow through to the end. And I hope some of these other items that you've been a part of, you'll continue to be a part of as well. So you will be missed. You represented the residents of District 2 and the entirety of the town well, and I do appreciate your service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will definitely be back for a while.
All right. So I think as one of your last official acts as a counselor at an organized meeting, do I have a motion to adjourn, Councilor Sasha?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Councilor Sasha, a second by Councilor Flaherty. Clerk Semino, can I have a roll call vote?
Councilor Ringus,
Aye.
Councilor Sasha,
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty,
Yes.
Councilor Mackin,
Aye.
all in favor to adjourn.
That is unanimous. Just really quick, I don't know if there's any other, there will be a public safety meeting next week, but Merry Christmas to all, happy holidays, and I'm sure I'll see you guys all soon. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
everyone.
Thank
Good night.
you.